to tonight's agenda prep. First, let me apologize for the confusion regarding what items should have actually been on this agenda prep. So the school district's lawyer and I miscommunicated on what should have been discussed. So what really we should be discussing is item 4 and item 6 besides the agenda prep. All other items were to have been put on for next week's board meeting. And so I apologize for the miscommunication and the turmoil that this has caused. But I'll begin with the agenda prep. Item 6A, academic update. Ms. Ruiz-Mills will
We'll have a special education update, this time we're applying to the Texas Education Agency's review plan. And then we'll also just give information regarding the early college high school designation and seek guidance from the board on how to proceed with that.
Item 6B will be our normal monthly construction update. Item 7A, approval of minutes. Consider approval of minutes for regular scheduled board meeting on February 18, 2019. Item 7A2, consider approval of minutes for special call board meeting on March 4th, 2019. Item 8A, consider approval of budget amendments. At this time, we don't have any. Item 8B is actually item 4 for today. Item 8C. Okay, let me read this completely. Is that okay? Item
5 from today.
Yes. It is number 5 on the agenda. Discussion and possible action to approve as provided under section 11.1541 of the Texas Education Code, a resolution to authorize the donation of the real property and improvements Bonham campus to Centro Cultural Hispano de San Marcos, where the Board of Trustees finds that the Bonham campus has historical significance. The transfer of Bonham campus to Centro Cultural Hispano de San Marcos will further preserve the campus. 3, the school district no longer needs the Bonham campus for educational purpose. And 4, Centro Cultural Hispano has shown it intends to continue to use the Bonham campus for public purpose and to direct the board president to execute a deed transferring ownership of the Bonham campus to Centro Cultural Hispano de San Marcos as provided under section 11.1541B. The deed transferring the property must recite the resolution of the Board of Trustees authorizing the donation and provide that ownership of the real property and improvements revert back to the school district if Centro Cultural Hispano de San Marcos discontinues to use the real property and improvements for a public purpose or executes a document that purports to convey the property to another owner. Oh, okay. Item.
Ms. Cantu, I'd like to see, as part of this, a site map showing exactly what we're talking about.
You'd like a map attached?
Right, and the improvements, I'd like to see them enumerated so we know exactly what we're talking about.
And Madam President,
Mr. McLaughlin?
for consideration of this, I would also like any deed the board considers to restrict the property from being pledged as security or as a part of a deed of trust for a loan that could allow foreclosure. I'll get with you on that.
And could we have the value?
Wasn't it presented last time in February?
The whole property.
On the appraisal? Or was that the entire property?
You gave us last time the entire property, the 2.3 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the net?
It was just the vacant portion. Okay. So you're asking for the full,
For the value of this property that we're talking about donating.
okay,
We'll break it down by both.
okay.
We have a current one, do we?
Item 8D in the agenda for next week is,
It's the one we're taking up tonight.
correct, item 6 in the agenda, discussion and possible action to have a public hearing to discuss the donation of Bonham Campus to Centro Cultural Hispano, direct staff to publish a notice of said hearing in the newspaper announcing the location, date, time of the hearing as determined by the Board of Trustees in compliance with Texas Education Code 11.1541 and any matters incident thereto. Item 8E is item 7. Discussion and possible action to approve as provided under section 11.1541 of the Texas Education Code, a resolution to authorize the donation of the real property and improvements Bonham Campus to Centro Cultural Hispano de San Marcos, where the Board of Trustees finds that 1, the Bonham Campus has historical significance, 2, that the transfer of the Bonham Campus to Centro Cultural Hispano de San Marcos will further preserve the campus. 3, the school district no longer needs the Bonham Campus for educational purposes. And 4, Centro Cultural Hispano has shown it intends to continue to use the Bonham Campus for the public purpose and to direct the board president to execute a deed transferring ownership of the Bonham Campus to Centro Cultural Hispano de San Marcos as provided under section 11.1541B. I think it's the same thing.
It sounds like the previous,
Let's see. Shorter.
I'll check
sounds
with,
a lot like C.
I'll check with legal.
Was this part of what Juan sent? I'm gonna put a question mark on it.
Item 8F, which is number 8 on the agenda prep. Discussion and possible action to approve a resolution for the sale of school district property through competitive sealed bids pursuant to Texas Education Code 11.154 and Texas Local Government Code Section 27.001A and any matters there incident thereto.
But we have listed on there the exact property we're talking about.
Yes, ma'am. Item 8G, consider approval and resolution supporting countywide polling place application.
Yes, we were approached by the, Texas, collector. What they're trying to do is do a resolution, whereas allowing that on election day, you can go to any polling place, and you don't have to reside in that precinct to vote on at that particular location. Like right now, if you're in District 2, you have to go to that. You can go to anyone on like an election day, just like you can during early voting. So that's a resolution.
That's a good idea. I understood there were some software issues that prevented that previously. Did they, those gone away, or do we know anything about that?
I don't know anything about it, but I can find out more information for you.
Yeah, I just want to make sure before we supported it that we had confidence that it would be accurate and that the county administrator could handle that idea, because previously we've had wrong ballots at right places, so, this seems like we're tripling the level of complexity. Seems like a great idea, but as long as they can handle it.
It's good too.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. Mrs. Griffith, on that same kind of line of questioning, I would like just confirmation that the county can accommodate countywide polling places for us since we hold our elections in May And typically, the November elections are joint elections. So I just want to make sure, given that typically we're the only jurisdiction on the ballot in May, that they can still accommodate that for us. I'm assuming it would make it easier since we're the only thing on there, but I just want confirmation before voting for this that since we are a May election standalone jurisdiction, that they can accommodate countywide.
And since we're talking about elections, we need to add an item where we're canceling the May elections. We said we were going to put that on this March agenda, so that would be probably I.
Ms.
Ms. Garcia, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, can we go back to number F? I wanted to, when we were talking about the property, do we already have an appraisal on whatever property we're talking about? Or, I mean,
Okay, I'm unsure at this point which property are we selling.
I don't know. She wanted to know what property. I'm asking.
It was a request for language in case it got brought up at Monday.
Okay,
I can
and if
explain
we're
that.
selling property, is there dollar value already attached to that property? I don't know, I mean, so.
At the last meeting, didn't you give us something on both of them, an amount that each of
I
them
don't
are
think
worth?
so.
I gave you amounts, but I didn't give you the actual appraisals, and I can't set
Yeah.
those up to you.
Okay, thank you,
Is that what you need?
that's fine.
Someone on this side? Okay. Ms. Yolanda?
On what Mr. Arredondo was referring to, we don't have to ask Caldwell County or Guadalupe County anything about, they should be able to manage our little bit that we have there, right? Or they have been in the past, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, because remember, I think they handle ours, Hayes County handles ours, but if they want to join election, their election is on.
No, our school district,
Mrs.
Mr. Arredondo's and myself
They were in Martin.
include Caldwell County and Guadalupe County.
Well, it will include them voting at that site, like so in Martindale, or they can come into San Marcos. However, if they're in Martindale or Guadalupe and they're voting on something that's in those counties, it will not be on our ballot.
Exactly, but, okay, so
they
it'd
could
be
come and
included.
vote.
Yeah, so they would have to go vote at that jurisdiction, but for us, for SMCISD, if somebody drove into town, like,
Yeah, yeah.
and they came in, they would be able to vote, but only for SMCISD.
Exactly, I understand that. Okay.
Mrs. Cantu.
Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you, Mrs. Cantu. It's my understanding that we execute a contract with Hayes County Elections Office, and they facilitate all of our elections, including those voters who come from Caldwell or Guadalupe County. But if we could get an answer on that, and again, the next step is, would they have to go and vote in San Marcos at a polling place countywide, and then also go to Guadalupe or Caldwell County? And if they do, I'd like an answer to that so that we can communicate with those school district voters that that would be the expectation if we choose to use countywide polling places, or what that looks like, if that's the case, if not, because again, those are all unknowns to us right now because we are a standalone election in May with multiple counties voting.
Except in Martindale, right? So they'd still do municipal elections at the same time as us?
They
Yes.
typically cancel them, but yeah.
So if they had an election, then they would they have to go to the Martindale polling place in order to vote for San Marcos and the Martindale at the same time, or they could go anywhere for anything? Or this doesn't impact their city elections at all?
Right, theirs is separate now anyway, so they would have a separate ballot, so they would have to go, so if I lived in Martindale and I wanted to vote for SMCISD, I could come into town and go to any polling place if that resolution passed. And then, but if I live in Martindale and I wanted to also vote at the same time for, I can't even talk.
Municipal.
For one of those elections, I would still have to drive over to Martindale and vote at that time.
Okay.
But in its current system, if I went on a Saturday in May, which would have the Martindale City Council election and the school board race in that county, then I could vote for both.
Right, you go
But
to
the approval of this resolution would essentially make voters have to go to two places. So again, I want a definitive answer if that's the actual scenario that we'd be voting for. And if it is, I just want us all to be aware of it as we vote in favor or against this resolution.
Did you have a comment? Any other questions? Ms.
Um,
Hanson?
Yes, I emailed you and Superintendent, about 2 items I wanted to add. So I just want to make sure those are added about the attorney's fees and itemized.
Correct.
And as we're supposed to report before election, and even though we're not going to have one, we still have to report the continuing education credits and costs of each board member.
Right.
Those 2 items.
So we can add that, Mr.
I'll forward it to you,
Cardona?
Karen.
That would be J and K.
Item,
Madam President,
Yes.
I thought we'd established last year that we were going to report out on the training hours in April, at the April meeting.
I'm trying to think when we did it last year.
Supposed to be before the election.
Right, and we
April
decided
before
that
the
April was the last meeting before the
So was March.
election.
We set it at a standard
Right.
time.
I think it's in board policy or handbook that
It
we
is.
established what it was.
We
so-
said April?
I mean, I guess.
I mean, I think we should check, because I think that we-
Yeah, if it says March, then fine, but if not, it should be whenever it says it's gonna be.
And then I had a separate request. Mr. Superintendent, I was wondering if we would be getting an update from the athletics department on the training of coaches and personnel in March? Yes, so that should be added to the superintendent's report, or where will that go?
Is that,
personnel discussion. Yes, we're adding it when we go to closed session.
No, I mean at the meeting next week.
At Monday's meeting, she's asking, we're going to add
We
an
can't, we have to
item.
have a closed session discussion, because
But I thought we were going to have a report out from the AD just on the trainings that happened.
yeah. He's ready. I met with him last week.
I think that we should do that.
Like informational,
I'm
I guess.
So the
Yeah, an
training would,
informational report on
PD.
the professional training,
Yes, we'll get it.
but it'll be in public session.
yes.
Just be one of our reports.
And are we adding a closed session, is that what you said?
No, we're not.
We're not, okay.
We will need.
Thank you.
And does that conclude?
Item 8H is consider approval of land donation agreement with LaCima.
It'll be ready?
Concludes the agenda prep.
Okay, so we've added canceling the agenda, canceling the election, 2 items from Kathy, and then the personnel report on,
Just an update on athletics and training.
high school athletics.
Pending our check of policy on what month we're supposed to present on training.
No, I'm talking.
The
Oh, sorry.
athletic training is separate then.
So is that, it's going to be in March or not going to be in March? You're going to check on that? March or April?
As to the board training, we were gonna check on whether that was in the policy.
The report on the board, training.
Yes. You and I'll look at those policies.
Okay. Anything else someone wants added, or clarified, or questioned? Okay, we'll continue with our agenda prep, and we now go into public forum. We had several people sign up to speak. I'm sure everybody read, you've got the 3 minutes, and we will keep the timer on. We'll start with Nancy Smith. She'll speak regarding donation of building.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Smith. I am serving on the School Fuel Board of Directors and here tonight representing School Fuel. I'm a 38-year retired San Marcos teacher. I have taught you, I have worked with your children, and most of you have worked with us at School Fuel. I know a lot about San Marcos School District and the children we all serve. School Fuel has grown from serving a weekend sack of food to 31 students at Mendez Elementary to serving 703 students now in all 6 elementary schools. Next year, we would like to follow the 5th graders into middle schools, raising our numbers to over 900 students. Our focus is on feeding children who fit our criteria. They are poverty level and below. And yes, some are homeless. We had homeless children in our district. We believe that a child must be fed in order to learn. With our program, we have reduced the number of visits to the campus nurse, improved test scores, and school attendance. because the children are staying in school where they can learn. We receive positive input from the children, their parents, school officials, and their extended families. We do a lot of fundraising. Our budget's over $150,000. It doesn't come cheap. We work hard. None of us are paid, I must say. We rely heavily on our volunteers. For instance, ACE Relocation Service, right down here from the high school. They come each Friday, take our tubs, unload them at the schools, bring them back to us. That's over $15,000 of free service. Central Texas Medical Center has given us over 70,000 sacks to pack our food in. We have brought awareness of childhood hunger to many members of San Marcos community. We have involved thousands of supporters in our efforts to combat food insecurity. If we have to pay rent next year, which would all your decision on this donation of the property where we reside, if we have to pay rent, it would knock out about 176 sacks of food. Which children will not be receiving food next year that are getting it this year? And how do we tell them they're out of the program? I have a hard time with that. School Fuel appreciates the support that San Marcos CISD has given us from the very beginning, always. And they have given us a lot of things, intrinsic value. And so we ask that you continue to support School Fuel. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Second speaker is Larkin Smith on school fuel statistics.
Good evening, members of the board. Larkin Smith. I am a volunteer with School Fuel, and my job is to collect statistics. And they come from actual volunteers that come in and sign. These are just 2 years. The statistics are basically the total number of sacks delivered, the total number of volunteer hours, the total number of different organizations such as churches, sororities, fraternities, schools, public, private, like San Marcos Baptist Academy, the Master's School, and of course Texas State. We have organizations from local governments, the police department, sheriff's department, businesses, all kinds. Other service organizations like SMART, and just a list. Many volunteers and many teachers from the San Marcos CISD. The total number of volunteers that come to help, and let me just give you a couple of statistics. 2014 and 15, 2015 and 16, we weren't able to count the total number of sacks that were delivered because they were fluctuating in numbers. But 2016 and 17, we delivered 19,496 sacks to children, and in 17 and 18, we delivered over 24,000 sacks of food to these children. The total number of volunteer hours we were able to collect, 2014 and 15, we volunteered for 3,065 hours, and it has risen each year to 2017, over 4,508 total volunteer hours. For the number of years that we have been in business, the total has been over 15,000 volunteer hours have been supporting this school program. The number of organizations, we started with 46 individual organizations in 2014 and 15, and it has steadily increased each and every year. And for the 2017 and 18, the total number of different organizations has risen from 46 to 95 different organizations. The volunteers that have come, this is on a weekly basis, 2014, 357, 15 and 16, 577, 16, year 2016 and 17. In other words, the numbers of volunteers that have come has steadily increased due to the popularity of the program. We started with Mendez back in 2013, like Ms. Smith talked about, and in this year, 2018 and 19, we're serving 6 elementary schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Next, we have Dan Lyon speaking on donation of Bonham to Central.
Thank you very much, Board and ladies and gentlemen. I could not believe what I was reading in the Sunday edition of the San Marcos Daily Record this afternoon. The headline read, quote, "District may donate campus to Centro," unquote. I thought that I was having a bad dream. I knew that the school board played fast and loose with the district's money, but I thought that there must have been a mistake. To my shock and horror, I read further and had my worst fears confirmed. A district which is over $300 million in debt is giving away a valuable piece of real estate. Let me make it clear. If the board were giving this property to the English Cultural Society, the German Cultural Society, or the Dan Lyons School for Public Speaking, my attitude would be exactly the same. This board has a fiduciary responsibility to the people who pay the taxes and the children of the district. As much as I would love to be able to donate to worthy causes, it would be immoral, if not illegal, to donate taxpayers' assets to a private organization. I know one of our trustees is an original founder, and I believe another one might have been on the board. I believe these people should recuse themselves from any votes on the matter. I beg you to keep the children of this district and the people who paid for Bonham in mind. They are the ones to whom you are primarily responsible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lyon. Sarah Lee Underwood Myers.
My name is Sarah Lee Underwood Myers. I'm a little confused, and that's why I'm here. I read also this in the newspaper over the weekend, and I'm concerned. What? Why? Do we give this property away? If we're going to give it away, let's give it to School Fuel. They're using it. I am a volunteer with School Fuel as well. Also a Lion, and we donate toward this for the children that you guys are representing. Please. I mean, I am so confused. You set this agenda today at 5, not 6. Something next week happening at the same time, and isn't it usually that you're on the 3rd Monday? I know you can't answer me, but I need these questions answered.
Thank you. Mr. Frank Arredondo, VF comment section.
Good evening. My name is Frank Arredondo. I want to thank the board for bringing this topic for discussion, and so the public is aware of what's taking place. Our mission is closely aligned to the school district. We provide education, cultural and artistic expression. We have vibrant activity all week long at Centro. Children are practicing the violin, I'm having speech problems too, and accordion, mariachi singing, the little girls dancing, folklorico dancing. If you would go and sit in the lobby of Centro any day of the week, you'd be amazed at what's going on. The singing, the dancing, public presentations of topics of interest to our culture, civic groups meeting there. It's a museum, but it's an active museum. We have art displayed, we have art, teaching art to children. This discussion that's going to take place today, I want to thank you. I'm excited. I didn't know that this could happen this soon. This has been a dream of mine and many of my personal friends. I'm a treasurer. I'm on the board. I'm a community member as well. A lot of you know who I am. I get up to speak when I think something is of interest and of concern to me. This is a special called meeting. That's why it's an odd week and an odd time. That's part of what goes on in scheduling on open meetings. And I don't want to get into any discussion of negative things, because I'm happy, I'm proud that you all have brought this to the forefront, and we would like the donation of the building. We have a lot of use for that building. We've made a lot of use to the building. If we get the building as is being discussed, we have plans to renovate it, to fix it up. We're going to start a capital campaign, and that's where the funds are going to go. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Arredondo. Next, we have Anaí Villarreal.
Hello, everybody. My name is Anaí Villarreal. So why am I here to speak to you about is about the approval for donating the Centro Cultural Hispano. So I'm a social work student from Texas State University. I'm currently in the bachelor's program, and I am going to be graduating in May. The reason I am with Centro right now is because I chose to intern there, and I chose to promote Centro and to help them develop the programs that they have been doing for the past 9 years. So I think that with the opportunity for y'all to approve the donation, we're gonna see way much more growth than we have been having in the past 9 years. Right now, I've been interning there since January, and I'm the first intern from the social work department at Texas State University. And that doesn't mean that I get to have all this fame and things. It just shows that Centro is growing, and that Centro is willing to commit to that growth and that development of programs for the children, for the parents, and for the community that we've been serving. I moved to San Marcos 2 years ago with the hope of having to name San Marcos my community, and thankfully to Centro, I can now say that this is my community. Because I know that the parents who've gone there, they rejoice that their children are learning and taking in consideration that their kids are learning from the programs. Because the majority of the population that we serve, according to my research that I've done this semester, is we serve low-income students. Where are these children supposed to go when Centro is not available for them anymore? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Villarreal. We will now move into item 4 of our agenda. Discussion/action regarding proposed administration building, including authorization to acquire architectural services in order to develop site plans and matters related thereto.
Thank you, Ms. Cantu. So I guess I'll just go ahead and kick us off, because this is one of the 2 items that I requested to be on tonight's agenda. So in an email exchange between the superintendent of schools and myself, I referenced a site plan for if the new central administration building were going to be located at our LBJ property, and having seen 2 iterations of that, the one that was given to us at, I believe, last month's agenda preparation meeting, and then the one given to us the night that we were asked to vote on one of the 2 proposals. On the first iteration of the site plan, it showed the parking lot developed around the trees and kind of the current landscape of the site. And then the proposal brought to us the night that we were asked to vote was different in the way that parking was laid out. And so I asked to see that site plan, among some other things, and I communicated with the superintendent at that time that if it were going to be an additional cost to the school district, I would not want that to happen as a single trustee requesting information. And so I'd asked if that were the case and we wanted to pursue that knowing the cost, I would like it to be on tonight's agenda preparation for us, or tonight's agenda, so that we could act accordingly. In regards to the other associated items that were on tonight, I just want to address that right now. At our February meeting, there was substantial dialogue and conversation about the future site of our central administration building, where it was going to go, why it was going to go there, the positive and negatives of both sites. And one of the comments that was made was that whether we choose LBJ or Suttles, that decision has an impact on the site that is unchosen. And because of that, it was asked by one of my colleagues, what would it take for some of us to become more comfortable with whatever decision was made? As an individual and as the requesting trustee, it was assurances that a future board would not subdivide the lot and sell either portion, or that they would not sell the entire block. It was brought up in that meeting that we cannot obligate future boards to do something unless we legally take action today to do that. And so, as an individual trustee, if it is the will of the board at our upcoming meeting to choose the Settle site, for me, I would like an associated item ensuring that a future board, or this board, would not sell the site, at least the land currently occupied by Centro and School Fuel. That's the first thing for some of those requested items. The second one, and to respond to, I think, the comments made during citizen comment and ongoing conversations, because this has been now a year-long endeavor by the school board, is in numerous conversations it's been brought up that the school district's intent is to remove the portables because of safety concerns and just kind of where we want to go with maintaining the site. As of right now, we have a contract with Centro for the entire Bonham campus, but in partners in the school district, partners supporting our students, School Fuel is currently occupying one of those rooms. So, with Centro using the portables and our intent of removing the portables due to safety concerns, I would assume that Centro's operations from those portables would move inside. Now, having two concerned parties here, I'm glad that they're here tonight, because it was my understanding that the school district was, or it was our intention to find space within the school district for School Fuel to relocate to. And again, this has been a year-long process. I know there's a lot of information out there, and I think more than anything, the agenda being posted the way that it did allowed all of these stakeholders to come to the table, because it is clear that we're all on very different pages about one very big, substantial, and expensive issue, which is spending excess of $5 million to build a new central administration building. And that vote in and of itself impacts all of these interested parties who have been here tonight, who, for whatever it's worth, we've had this conversation, but this is the first they're hearing about a lot of this. So in regards to the sale of land, in regards to the donation of Centro, all of that was for a future meeting, our regular called meeting, but after communicating with our legal counsel, which I included Mrs. Cantu, Mr. Cardone, and Mr. McLaughlin, as per kind of standard procedure when we talk with Juan, is I wanted language for several agenda items. Typically, when we're at board meetings, we craft our own agenda or motions for action, and there's concern from colleagues if that's legal, if that gets us what we want to accomplish, so on and so forth. So I made the request from legal so we would have various languages for various motions or actions that we could take at that regular called meeting if this board chose to do so. I would assume that, given a different set of circumstances or chain of events, it would have been communicated with the board, but I do apologize that it was presented in the way that it was based on the way the agenda was posted, which I take responsibility for. I know Michael and I communicated with through email. Same thing with Ms. Logue, and again, I want to apologize to Ms. Logue for any grief you might have gotten because of the posting of agenda items that I requested for a future meeting. All of that to say, Juan, our legal counsel's direction was, if we want to have any of these conversations, if we want to take any action, take no action, donate, not donate, what have you, this board had to approve the scheduling of a public hearing to get citizen input before anything was done for anyone, for any organization, or for any property. So that was the intent of item 4 and 6 for tonight, was questions regarding the site plan that was presented to us at the first conversation where the parking lot was laid out differently, and then asking my colleagues on the board to vote in the affirmative to schedule a public hearing regarding this issue at our March meeting so that we could gain citizen input, in particular related to item number 4, or excuse me, 6's language.
Comments?
Are we
Comments on
commenting
item
on 4 or 6?
I have a
I think
comment
that
on
was a
4.
mix, that was a mixed mash, but.
You're talking about 4
That was
and
the point
6.
of both of those being up
Together.
there. I didn't, the only one that I had intended to have actual definitive action on would have
Was
been
6.
6.
Okay.
But I know that it was worded as it was in case the board chose to take action to empower the administration to develop that site plan that I assumed had already existed beforehand, but I didn't get a copy of.
So do we need a motion to table 4 and just
Well,
go
can I
straight
get
to
an
6?
answer on what the site plan that we had first seen, I guess, at that first meeting where it was laid out differently? I don't know if anyone's here to answer that.
So construction people.
That depends on the extent that you want, this site plan.
Mhm.
Basically, what they're doing is they just measured and put on the site, but how, there's several things they've gotta do, the, geotesting, they've gotta do the survey, there's several things that has to go in place before he can draw out exactly the way it's gonna look. So I don't know exactly what you're wanting, if you're wanting exact details of what that's gonna look like, what trees will have to come out, and stuff like that, they're gonna have to go through full schematic design, which we will have to pay for. If you're just wanting him to plot it down to see what it would look like, you know, an approximate, they do that and they don't, they have to charge us for that. So I guess it's the intent.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I guess just to clarify my request, and I guess, again, miscommunication via email, was an argument was made at our last meeting that due to the layout of the parking lot, the rainwater detention that would be required for the LBJ site, that it would be cost prohibitive because we would essentially have to clear cut all the trees, all the heritage trees, and that'd be a substantial cost. And again, my question was, well, what happened to the site plan that didn't do that? And why was that not presented to us? And if that was a site plan that existed, can we have it again if and when this board makes a decision on a new central administration building? Because the argument is because of these things, Suttles was the more desirable site, although we had a site plan that I guess addressed those concerns, but then it changed when it came to us the night of the vote. And if that is in its most basic form, which I believe I communicated with in email, that's what I want to see. I don't want anything too elaborate or 3D modeling or anything like that. I just want to see the original site plan that did not clear cut all of the trees and put the detention pond essentially where the trees and the old playground were. Because that was kind of the concern and the cost implications of choosing the LBJ site was the tree removal.
Well, and why it changed, I guess, is interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know why there was one and then there was another on the same square footage of building, one that was prohibitive and one that seemed to work. That's confusing to me.
Well, and along those same lines, I'd like to see if that iteration that they're talking about isn't the iteration that builds phase 1 at the lowest cost point possible. I would like to see that iteration, which presumably would be the one that doesn't have to do the tree removal, but if there's another way to orient the building or what have you that would decrease cost significantly, I would like to see that. I also don't want to go through the whole schematic process to get to that. Right. I want a bare bones phase 1 on this site.
And I appreciate Ms. Halsey's
How can we do
comment
that?
of that nature, because I'd like clarification on both sites, which again, I'm under the assumption that this board will be asked to take action on a central administration building at our upcoming meeting or a future meeting, but still having information I think is critical, is are we building the rainwater and runoff and just impervious cover requirements to phase 1, like Ms. Halsey said, or are we projecting what that would look like at full build out? Because obviously we would need a lot more room for impervious cover rainwater detention if we're planning for land that accommodates all the way up to phase 3 of central office expansion versus just phase 1, which I think it was communicated at the last meeting that we're going to be lucky to get this across the finish line, let alone 2 additional expansions of that building.
Ms. Hanson?
I'm a little confused. Item 8B on our March agenda. I don't see where it says we're actually selecting a site. Are we selecting a site, or are we just,
It's not on the March agenda. 8B is just moved, that 8B was supposed to be tonight. 8B appears on tonight's agenda as Roman 4.
what are
And
we
so it's
doing?
not going to be on, 8B is not going to be on the agenda for the March 11th meeting.
So we're not doing anything with the administration building in March?
There's nothing presently on the agenda with regard to selecting a site for March. Presumably, we'd have to do that, come back in April or May or whenever we decide to do it.
Why are we postponing it?
At our last meeting, we said we were gonna take it up in March. And what I'm hearing is that 4 does not need our attention, only 6 needs our attention. And if it doesn't need our attention, then we probably need to put it on the March. Because part of our conversation at the last meeting was that we needed to give ourselves more time to have more information. So we keep pushing it, and so we've now gone we're gonna go 1 more month. So are y'all suggesting that we wait until April?
I was just pointing out it's not on the agenda. I didn't have anything to do with the agenda's preparation. I think more information is what we talked about. Since that meeting, we've received nothing new. I think there's some discussion about how it fits on the old site. I think that would be something we'd have to consider. I don't know when that would be ready. This meeting's in 7 days. I have some questions about the Hunter Road site and how much of that 11 acres would be occupied in phase 1, and whether there would be an ability to partition any of that property off in order to recover some funds by sale. I don't know how quickly we would know that information and a value of that property. So, I mean, we can, obviously, 2 trustees can put it on the agenda 7 days out, but to me, there's some important information we don't have yet, so
you're not ready for it to go on the March agenda, is that what you're saying?
I mean, if all those things come together quickly in the next week, I guess, but it seems unlikely, and we just had a big fight about whether we do it right away or we delay it. So to me, April seems safer, but, I mean, I agree, we don't want this to linger into the summer, but, you know, it may have to go more than 7 more days.
So what new things are we asking before we vote on the site? I would like to know exactly what new things are we asking for.
I think Mr. Arredondo and
The first, I guess, yeah, just to, I guess, clarify, so request number 1 in regards to information. Well, first and foremost is the public hearing that we have regarding this issue. Again, to gain citizen input, which I guess is agendized for tonight to take action on. The other is, I guess, the site plan for our LBJ property with just phase 1 build out, with the iteration that I guess had already been brought to us that showed the parking lot built around and designed around the trees and the current landscape versus what was brought to us the night that we were asked to vote. And yes, just phase 1.
Ms. Costilla?
Just following up with what you indicated earlier, Ms. Cantu, is that at the last meeting, there was a vote taken, and that vote was the site, regarding the site location.
Right.
Okay. There was no direction given to the staff about what needed to come back to us. So when we're talking about putting it for next week or for next Monday or for April, I think that, you know, it's gone back and forth enough, and the board took legal action and voted on giving out $4.5 million for a building. Is that correct, Karen? Was it 4.5?
It was 4.5, and then
Sometime
we
back,
used
okay.
200,000.
And I know that it went to the Mendes. What I'm getting at is that we need to really put down what everybody wants and give that to the staff. Find out whether we can put it on the agenda on Monday, or if we need to postpone it until April. So that way we can have a full picture and we can make a decision without having staff go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So I think that all of us need to put down what we actually want and give it to them and let them decide whether they have ample time between now and next Monday or whether they need until April. So we, like I said, once again, we can have that full picture to make a decision, please.
I agree with that. I think that's what we're trying to do. That they had the 2 requests about the LBJ site, I had a request about how much of the Hunter site would be used and how much property would be left, and then an appraisal on the value of the remaining property. If we were to just build phase one and sell the remainder of the Hunter lot, how much money would we recover from that? That's information that I would need in order to decide between the two.
This item is specifically for the LBJ site.
Item
Architecture,
8B
yeah.
is talking about the LBJ site.
Right,
But we're
this
still,
item B.
But we've expanded it, obviously, to talk about the whole
Yeah, there was
central
some-
office relocation.
We haven't made a decision about the site yet.
Right, but under
That's
this
what this
agenda
portion
item, we are
is.
now talking about the whole project instead of just talking about the one on the site.
Right.
This item was intended to have us start the process of site development at LBJ. This B.
It's not
Right.
specific enough to say that.
it
I mean,
doesn't say LBJ, though.
Whether or not it says it, I think it empowers us to ask or request information
Yeah.
on both the Subtle side and the LBJ side, because in its silence, it doesn't only obligate us to request information on one. So if anyone has issues or questions about Subtles or the LBJ side, then this would be the perfect opportunity to do that, because it's matters related to the proposed administration building.
Okay.
Ms. Villalpando?
Ms. Cantu, thank you. We're going around in circles, and we've discussed this last time, and we're discussing it again. I'm sorry, but to me, we can't even discuss the donation until we've decided what site we're gonna be. So it's, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth and trying to decide, you know, where are we gonna locate our administration building? That's priority number one. Then we can think of donating any property to anybody. And then there are regulations concerning public notice, and we can't just have one, we need to have 2 public notices. And there's other things in our legal CDBG document that there are other concerns. So I would like to refer our board members to go and read it, and then we come back when we're ready to decide on the donation. Is that okay?
It's that the donation is not an option while we haven't decided where we're going to
Exactly.
build. So I don't think
So,
that
just to reiterate my point, and again, as the requesting trustee, it was, shouted at the last meeting, you know, what's it gonna take for some of us to get on board with the proposal in front of us? And it was expressed by some, it was assurances that the OBJ site in any way, shape, or form was not sold or subdivided, or portions of it were sold, without answering some serious questions that some of us had. One of us is the future of the Old Bonham campus. So to answer that question that was asked, what's it gonna take for some of us to be more open-minded or supportive of a decision? It's tonight, having the public hearing at our next meeting, that we talk about the proposed central administration building as related to the donation of the Old Bonham campus to Centro. Now, in a public hearing, anyone can go and speak about any issue related to that. So if you're in favor of the admin building, against the admin building, in favor of the Subtle site, in favor of the LBJ site, in favor of donation, against donation, that's all allowable in the public hearing. So that, in regards to that item, which I'm requesting be voted on tonight to schedule the public hearing, is what that is. Now, in regards to donation of land, future use, again, the question was asked, what's it gonna take for some of us to be more supportive? And as the requesting individual trustee regarding this issue, that is what my response to that is assurances that in whatever decision we make, that building is left untouched and unsold, regardless of who the tenant is or regardless of who it's donated to, that is what would get me to be a more supportive trustee of whatever decision we make in regards to site location. So that's why the language is what it is, and I would disagree that we have to vote and decide on a central administration property site and expend those funds, and then at a later meeting decide what happens to the Old Bonham campus. And I think this all is bore out of what happened previously with the sale of the Lamar property. We had individuals in this community come to this school board a few months ago and say, we didn't know that Lamar was being sold. There was no public hearing. There was limited citizen input, if any. Why did y'all do this? Can you buy it back? So on and so forth and so on. So I'm hoping that this conversation, this dialogue, prevents that from happening again. I know only 3 trustees are up on this dais who voted in favor of the sale of Lamar property, and as one of the 4 who was not here during that process, I want to make sure that we are as transparent and provide for as much citizen input and public engagement on this issue, regardless of the decision inevitably made is related to this matter. So again, when it comes to public hearing, Centro, Bonham, donation, no donation, site selection, amount of money expended from fund balance without voter approval, the more citizen engagement and public input that there is, I think the better. Because the current process which is in place had people coming to us a few months ago saying they weren't aware of the sale of Lamar or that it was going to be sold or can you buy it back. And so that's what I'm trying to prevent from happening again. And my last comment in regards to this whole process is people who say we're not going to sell central office, the block, the LBJ property are the exact same people who voted to sell the Lamar property. So that's where my hesitation comes from when we say no one's interested in selling it. Well, some of us were up here the last time we sold a huge parcel of land that has led to significant divisions and disdain in portions of this community. And so I want to prevent that from happening again.
Ms. Yapondo?
I'm not arguing what Miguel is saying, that's fine. What I'm saying is that we do have to have a public notice. It can't be a public hearing here. I mean, the public hearing has to be here, but a public notice is to a newspaper in circulation of our district, or maybe a couple of newspapers, and you have to have two hearings.
Mrs.
So we have to
Villalpando,
schedule 2 hearings.
I want to direct you
on
to-
different dates.
Mrs.
I'm
Villalpando,
sorry.
I want to direct you to the language that is on the agenda item listed in
I'm
front
not-
of you, provided by our district's legal
And
counsel.
I want to
That
relate.
says that we will direct staff to publish a notice of said hearing in the newspaper announcing the location, date, and time of the hearing as determined by the Board of Trustees in compliance with Texas Education Code. So all of
All I'm
those
saying
things
is
would
we
be
need to have
complied
2
by.
different dates of notice. He interrupted me, I'll interrupt him.
Mr. Arredondo, would you let her finish and then you can talk? Thank you. Ms. Yapondo?
Well, that's all I want to say.
It's
2
mine.
different notices for 2 different dates to have a public hearing. And when we do, we'll have to make arrangements because we have had meetings where we don't have enough room for the people that come to speak.
Ms. Hanson?
Okay, I'm still confused on item 8B. Are we just discussing information, or are we selecting a site? If we're just discussing, then it needs to move to the discussion section.
But it's not even on our agenda at all. It's what we're doing right now. It appears on the agenda for the 11th meeting by mistake. And this is my
I wasn't told
understanding.
that.
8B is not really on the final agenda for the 11th. This is the item we're taking up right now, which also appears on tonight's agenda. And I spent forever trying to figure that. Anyway, that's another story.
So that's
But
not going to be on there come Monday?
it's not presently on there. There's no action item with regard to the administrative facility currently on the March 11th agenda.
Okay, well, it's on the March 11th agenda I have.
It
And
is.
the superintendent mentioned it. So when did it get taken off?
I think
He
we
said
went over-
When he
we
read
were
it.
addressing it tonight at this meeting.
It's on, we're doing it right now. It's on both agendas.
So we're not going to receive any
It's on both of them.
clarification of the information?
Are you talking about to hire architectural services for
Right.
the site plan?
Well,
Am I reading
anything
this?
on, anything that's on B. So we're just going to take all of that off.
Well, we're the board. We can add something to our
I'm
agenda.
asking.
But presently, it's on this draft copy, but erroneously. This was actually supposed to be This was supposed to be tonight. That's what we're doing right now. It's the agenda item on agenda prep that appears as Roman 4 and not on the March 11th meeting. However, it shows up in both places presently by error. So we're covering it tonight, and it was posted, and it's
Madam
presently
President,
not.
we're taking B off, totally.
8B, yes.
All right, I did not understand that. And secondly, so we're gonna postpone selecting the site until another month or so. I wanna make sure I understand all this, so we don't come back and then it pops up somewhere.
At present, the site selection's not agendized for the March 11th meeting. I think that, I don't know, we had so far four information requests this evening for additional information. I don't know when that sort of survey, architect, appraisal data would be back, but I don't know that it would be back by the 11th, so to me it seems that deciding on administrative location in April would be the safest practice.
Okay, I have several requests to add to that. I would like to know what is in writing the plan for school fuel location, and who's going to assist them in the move. And I have concerns that our agenda prep meeting has morphed into a second board meeting. When we started this, it was going to be a brief meeting at noon where we didn't take action, we just discussed the upcoming agenda. And I don't remember the last time that we've done that. We've changed them all into emergency things we have to vote on, and I don't see any emergency here. Third thing, I applaud the work Central has done. I don't understand the rush to the donation. They have a very inexpensive long-term lease at this time. I'm concerned about the precedent we're setting by giving away building and property. And I really want more public input, even to a public vote, because this is something that we have not done as a district, give away taxpayer property and buildings.
I think there's other board members that share that concern, because looking at what's coming up in the next few years, I don't know that we have that kind of liberty with money.
Right.
Because of the recapture that's in the near future. And Mr. Superintendent was telling me today, Mr. Cardona said, we may be looking at recapture earlier than we thought. So to me, it's a concern as well to be giving away property, because we do need to build and then hold on to our property. The property on Suttles, if we were to sell it, I would be concerned that later on we'd need it. And if we sold it, it'd have to go into our bond indebtedness anyway. It wouldn't go into the education of the children or into our reserves. So I like you, have some concerns with the status of our finances.
President Cantu, may I
Yes,
respond to that?
Mr.
So from my understanding, if we sell a property in conjunction with construction of the central admin, the revenue bonds generated from the sale can be applied towards the construction of the central administration building, which is coming directly out of fund balance. So in this instance, it actually could preserve fund balance dollars for use in regular educational purposes. But we can get some clarification from Juan in advance on that, or whomever that gets directed towards.
I spoke today to to Juan, and he had agreed with me when I said, if we sell one of the two properties, would that go into the bonded indebtedness? And he said yes.
But my understanding is that we've done this before. When we sold the property at Lamar, we used that money to offset the building of the IT center. So if we've done it previously, one would think that we can do it going forward.
If we weren't doing construction out of fund balance, you're right. We would be stuck. We would just pay down debt, which is nothing wrong with paying down debt. But here, it's actually money that would be freed up for any purpose that we wanted, educationally or academic intervention or whatever, because we are going to have to spend fund balance dollars for the construction of the
For admin, right.
But I mean, if there's still uncertainty about it, we should certainly get clarification, but that's at least my understanding. And I did want to completely echo and amplify on Ms. Hanson's point about agenda prep. I strongly believe that we have to follow our calendar. Our calendar said we were meeting at noon today. And I think the only way we can depart from the calendar is by board action at the prior meeting or what have you, or some true emergency that the administration's bringing to us. So I would have much preferred this meeting be at noon, and I think I might have given mixed signals on that before, that if we're spending money, we should have public comment at night. I get that, so just let's not spend money at agenda prep. Let's talk about the agenda and let's move on. I follow that calendar and plan around it. I know all of my colleagues do for work and for other stuff. And, this came on so quick, and all these folks came down here because it was very unclear what exactly we were doing. And I know that everybody's taking responsibility for that, and we don't need to go back into it, but just on the record, I really think if we just set up practice of only deviating from our calendar by action of the board at a prior meeting, that would be helpful to me as a trustee.
Or when we're having a workshop, I don't mind meeting at 5 if we've got a 2 or 3 hour workshop.
But we usually set those. We say,
We
we're gonna have a
set- and we
workshop
set
at
them
agenda
at-
prep, so
right.
let's move it. We have a conversation. This is the first time I've ever found out with just a calendar invite and then a Sunday newspaper article. And I know how it happened, and I spent 2 hours trying to figure that out, and we don't need to go back over all that ground, but I just want to be really clear, at least, what my preference is moving forward.
Ms. Halsey?
I agree absolutely with that, and I would only add that I think this month is a little bit wonky, and this goes to a question that was raised earlier, that the schedule's changed this month. Normally, our meetings are the third Monday of every month, except that the third Monday of every month this month falls right in spring break. So we typically try to accommodate that.
And our posted calendar does say we're going to meet on the 11th at 6. So we didn't have to take action to move that meeting, because that's when it is.
Ms. Villalpando?
Yes, I agree with with having agenda prep. It doesn't matter, noon or afternoon, it doesn't matter to me. I'll try my best to get away. But and in the past, when we've had action items, they've been because either the staff or the board needed to act on something that was urgent. And this, to me, is not urgent, so I don't see any action that really
Needs to take
needs to take place.
I'm going to make a motion, but let me clarify firsthand.
Okay.
So the intent of this was under the assumption that we were going to take action on a selection of a site at our upcoming meeting. Because, again, the board was not provided with any additional information. So with the information at hand, I assumed that powers that be we're going to go 4-3 on this thing. Again, I requested these items be placed on an agenda, the information associated with them. Again, it was asked by one of my colleagues, what's it going to take for you to become supportive of this? And here we are tonight. Regardless of the date, when I make this motion without a date in regards to a public hearing regarding this issue, I want it scheduled for the same meeting that we are deciding on the site location and the associated budget expenditures in regards to the new central office. So, and again, by language in the item, this would empower staff to do all legal postings in the newspaper, online, media, whatever that looks like. Again, this was furnished by our legal counsel, so I'm assuming voting for this would empower staff to do everything that would be required for the public notices regarding a public hearing.
Don't you have to say a public hearing is going to be on a specific date?
Well, so if they're scheduling it for
April
yes,
15th.
so if it's April 15th, but whatever that is, I don't want us to say, oh, well, we're actually not talking about central office on April 15th. We're doing it the third Monday in May.
We have to have.
But we're talking about the public hearing about the donation.
Right.
Not a
Yeah.
hearing.
But he wants them at the same meeting, I believe. is
Yeah,
what
so
it
that
is.
people wouldn't have to attend the public hearing a month prior. But this just assures me that whatever night we vote on a central office, we have that public hearing as well. And there's no, well, I didn't know that I had to come to both meetings. I didn't know that the public hearing date was separate from the vote for the central administration site. Any of that. Any concerned citizen, engaged citizen, voter, taxpayer, student, parent, whatever that looks like, just has to attend the one meeting to address all of those issues.
So you just want to move it to April?
If that is the date of the proposed central office vote, then yes, but I don't want that date to change for whatever reason and us have to go through this entire process again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but yeah, so I want both of them to be contingent on each other, almost, that they happen at the same time, at the same meeting at least.
Mrs. Griffith, doesn't it
allows
seem
everybody
reasonable
to-
that those 4 information requests, we could have that long in advance of the April 15th meeting?
Yeah, I was just, if the board would like, I don't know when our next, agenda prep is. I don't know if I'm speaking out of term, but can we have a workshop to discuss this and bring all this information so that we're ready to talk about it and vote on it on the 15th? Would that be okay or no?
I'm in,
Workshop.
Ms.
I think,
Henson
yeah,
or
we
Ms.
work.
Castillo?
Workshops usually like admin working with board, and this is more entire district working with community about highly charged decision. So it seems like a meeting would be a better
This side of,
for that.
this side of the dais wants to speak.
My
Ms. Hanson?
understanding was the public hearing was about donating Bonham to Centro.
yes.
So, but public hearings happen before we start the board meeting, is that not correct? So how could we have a public hearing about donating before we haven't selected the site for central office?
Because they're not contingent on either or. I know people have said that they're contingent on either or, but they're not. There's nothing that prevents us or enables us to do both or to do either. But for me, again, to respond to what one of my colleagues asked was, what's it gonna take for someone to be more comfortable with Suttles? It would be in the same meeting that that decision is made, that there's some assurances made that we're not gonna sell the current property occupied by the Bonham facility. And in its current form, the scenario that's in front of us, it's the donation to Centro. So that's where I am, and that was the onus and the impetus for this request. So again, the chain of events, per what my understanding is with Juan, is the board had to vote by simple majority to schedule the public hearing regarding this issue. So I'm gonna make a motion here in a second to schedule this in conjunction with the meeting that we're gonna have, I guess, in April, to discuss central office. And then at that point, those subsequent agenda items that were posted today, by no one's own fault, just accident, would be on that agenda as well. But those could not be put on an agenda for action unless this public hearing took place. And in that instance, the public hearing would happen before all those items were brought up for action.
And before you make a motion on Ms. Castillo?
I was just gonna follow, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Following up on what Ms. Villalobos was making reference to about public notices,
Policy.
or could we find out, to be on the safe side, the time limit, or are we within a time limit to make sure that we're not short of days or whatever to fall into that category? Because then we come back and say, well, somebody will tell us, well, you didn't post it long enough, or you posted it too quick, or you posted it, whatever. I just want to make sure that we can have the legal time frame to make sure it's all covered when we really address it. So, that's,
Legal counsel said he was available tonight if we needed to call him. He didn't have a board meeting. So when I spoke to him today, he says if you have any issues or questions or concerns, that we could call him about the timeline. Because if we're going to go to having these public hearings, they need to happen early April so that we're ready for the vote in our April third week notice, meeting.
Why don't we take a five minutes to find that out? I think that my understanding is,
I think it's 30 minutes, but we can find out, confirm that.
why don't we take a 5 minutes and
Take a 5-minute
Michael,
break.
you can, call Juan, and then we can reconvene.
Okay, we'll call a
there's
break
questions, it seems like.
at 6:14. reconvening at 6:29. Were you going to give us a report?
Is there a verdict?
So ask the question again, because I talked to Juan about several things.
Well, I think the question was, can we do the public hearing at the same meeting where we discuss the site of the administration building?
And he said yes, that we could.
But I thought the public hearing was about donating Bonham.
Right, and those are connected in some folks' minds. Those two
okay.
items are connected. So, and I think they were going to just do that in March. That was the proposal. Originally, Mr. Arredondo was going to propose that happen in March. We discussed donating the Bonham property to Centro. And then there was some indication that should wait if Central Administration site was going to be delayed till April. And then I think he was hearing that concern and then saying, yeah, let's take them both up in April. And then there was some concern about whether you could do them at the same time legally. And that's what
You can.
Mr. Cardona contacted
Juan
Mr.
Cruz.
Cruz about, and he said that we can. So it seems like we're all, he can make a motion now, and we
Now
can
we're ready
vote on
for
whether to
motion.
have a
What are we
public
having
hearing.
the public hearing on?
The language that's in front of you.
Just the donation of Bonham.
Correct.
But not on a site for central administration.
No.
No.
But we're going to do those two things at the same meeting if Mr. Arredondo's motion carries. Oh, Ms. Griffin.
Okay, I am so sorry, I just want clarification, you do have to post it, so you gotta have enough time in 14 days to post the public notice in the paper. So if you're wanting to do it in March, it's kinda too late.
April.
No,
Let's
it
move
would
it
be
to
for
15.
April.
All April. yes.
April,
It's gonna
don't
be for
mess it up,
April
April
15th.
15th. Yeah, we're good.
We're going to
Karen.
April 15th.
Oh,
April
excuse me.
15th.
Ms. Villapando?
Karen, don't we have to have two
You just have to post it,
postings
yes,
Twice.
twice?
yes,
Two
And they have to
Sundays.
be 14 days in between?
yes, which will have time.
There's enough time between now.
But when you
That's
say
all I wanted
two
to
separate
clarify.
postings, you just mean in two different formats of posting, correct?
Like two ads.
Consecutive weeks.
Okay.
So like you could do Sunday of one week and Sunday, kinda the same way.
And so obviously there's more than 2 weeks between now and April 14th, so we're going to
15th.
satisfy all legal
Yes.
requirements.
We're good with
and
time.
Concerns of my colleagues, okay.
Okay, that's all I want.
Thank you for looking up for that.
All right.
Okay, Mrs. Cantu, I'd like to make a motion that we have a public hearing to discuss the donation of the Bonham campus to Centro Cultural Hispano de San Marcos and to direct staff to publish a notice of said hearing in the newspaper announcing the location, date, and time of the hearing as determined by the Board of Trustees in compliance with Texas Education Code Section 11.1541 and any matters incident thereto on April 14th.
15.
15th, excuse me.
And I second.
Moved by Mr. Arredondo and seconded by Ms. Halsey.
Ms.
Any
Can-
further question or discussion?
I just clarifying, so, and in this way, and it's my understanding that this does not bind the board to take any action. All this does is allow for a public hearing regarding this issue. If there's subsequent agenda items related to the public hearing, then those can be acted upon, voted against, abstained from, not supported, what have you. But this is just to schedule the public hearing for the April 15th meeting and allow for additional citizen input regarding this issue.
Anyone else?
Any more
Questions,
discussion?
comments, further discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ms. Hanson, are you voting? No?
Yeah, I'm voting.
All opposed? 6-1. Motion carries.
All right, a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion by Mr. McLaughlin, seconded by Mr. Arredondo. All in favor? All in favor to adjourn? 1, 2, 3.
Oh.
Did you